Right, so today we're going to do a video on how to paint with acrylic paints. Before we start, have a look at the paint that I've poured out. This is a 5p piece, just so you can see the amount. You really don't need a lot of paint to paint with acrylics. They go a long way and they can be watered down as well. So I've got my paints out. I've also got my reference images, which obviously I've looked at those so that I know what paints I want. Now before you start, you really need to know the colour wheel and how that works. You should know the primaries and secondaries so you can use those together to make sure you know how they work first. I'm going to be doing this yellow flower at the top. So the first thing I need to do is make sure that I know what my colour bases are. And as you can see, it's yellow. Then in the centre here, I'll just move this forward. In the centre, we've got some orange. It is orange on the image. And further towards the centre, we've got browns. And then we've got some ochre colours, which are the darker yellow colours. I'm going to take my brush. I'm going to take the lightest colour that I've got here, which happens to be the yellow. And I'm just going to map out the rough shapes. So this is called using positive space, which is basically picking out those main shapes. I'm just going to block in all of that yellow colour. Now when I paint with acrylics, I don't use a lot of water, literally using a tiny bit on the end of my brush, so you can see how far that's going. If you look at how much I painted and how much paint I've got left at the minute, so it's gone quite a long way. Okay, so you can make that go around. This is looking slightly unbalanced. I'm a little bit unhappy with this, so what I'm going to do is just pop a petal in there so that to me that looks a little more balanced. We've got to think about our image balance and how it looks from one side to another. So I've got my yellow in. So the next thing I personally want to work on is probably be these petals with the orange. Now I don't really mix on the palette, I always mix when I paint, so that is really taking small amounts of the colour, popping them on, and then letting the rest of the colour do the work. So I'm going to try and pop it up here so you can see. So as you can see there, where I've put the orange on, or the red, sorry, it's obviously very strong, but I can make it go to orange by adding the yellow straight over the top. I'm not needing to rinse my brush, so you get a nice pure colour. Now, I'm sure you know, brown is made from the primary colours. So what I can do is I can identify what kind of brown I want. So I want quite an orangey brown, so that means I'd have to have more red and yellow because that creates orange, and less blue. Oh, there we go. That's a reddy brown. If I just show you on the bottom of the page there, it's more of a reddy orangey brown, so I'm quite happy with that. I'll use that. It is a little bit black, so I might use a little bit of blue and just use that on top of the brown. The brown will take up that blue colour that you can see and will incorporate it, trick our eyes into believing that's more of a black. Just one thing that's concerning me when I'm painting this is it's obviously all very similar in colour. So one thing I'm going to be looking for is how to pick out the difference between each petal and how you can tell which one's coming forward and which one's not. So a lot of that's going to be done when I've got all the base colours on, and I'm going to be thinking about really mixing some lighter tones of yellow, maybe using some white in there. But one way in which I'm preparing that is to use a contrasting colour, which is the colour opposite on the colour wheel to my main colour. So because I'm using yellows and oranges, I can use purples and blues to just pick out maybe some of the details, some of the shadows. You don't want to use a lot, but just a little bit really helps underlie the colours. Right, so I've got to a point where I'm not finished, but I'm nearly there. You've just seen me add a little bit green around some of the edges, and I'm just going to soften that with some yellow. One thing you've got to watch for when you're painting, can you see that sloppy edge there? That one, I'll just point my shadow at it. There and there. You want to watch your edges. So when you're painting, just take time to neaten those up somewhere near the end. It's okay to have a bit of an impression. As long as you've got those mix of colours in, gives you a little bit of depth to it. So that's how you use the colour wheel. That's how you use acrylic paint, paint a flower. Hopefully you'll get a good result.